Hi, my name's Kim. I'm a licensed and nationally certified Chinese medical provider, and I'm a Daoist practitioner. Before I get started, I wanted to give a big shout out to all my subscribers. Hey, thank you so much for making your life more beautiful and the lives of others around you more beautiful and more comfortable. You know what? I also wanted to reach out to those of you who are participating in the channel today and invite you to subscribe and become part of a community that is dedicated to making your life better and making the lives of people around you better. If you've been watching this channel, you know I focus a lot on trying to better understand ourselves and how we interact with this world. Well, I've got another one for you. And this time we're going to look at the clock in Chinese medicine and how it relates to the primary channels. And you know what the primary channels are because those are the ones that we hear about all the time. So that's going to be the lungs, the large intestine, the stomach, the spleen, the heart, the small intestine, the bladder, kidneys, pericardium, sanjiao, gallbladder, liver. And there's 12 of those channels, right? There's 12 of those primary channels. So what's the deal with this clock, right? Well, in a regular day, we have 24 hours. And we're going to take that 24-hour and we're going to split it up into 2-hour segments. 2-hour segments. So now, when we do that, 24 divided by 2, that means we have 12 segments. We have 12 channels. That means we have one segment for every channel. That's amazing. Okay, so there is one segment for every one of our primary channels. And what does that mean? Well, it means a lot of things. And one of the things that it means is it tracks how our chi flows through the day, through our lives, through the year. And it tracks, I guess what you would say is it tracks our life force or our energy. It's about that chi from birth, from after birth to death. So it's called the postnatal chi, and it's about our life. And it's also cyclical. So it's like day after day after day, or it's after year, our lives, they're all very cyclical. And you can look at this at the macrocosmic scale, and that would be our life from when we're born to when we die, or you can look at it in smaller chunks. And this cycle of energy is how our energy flows to the body. What does that mean? Well, okay, first, it's going to be a really specific type of chi, right? It's going to be our postnatal chi, so it's going to be about our life. And what makes that interesting is that means that this is about how we physically manifest in the world. And that means that the primary channels are about how we physically manifest in the world and how we interact with the world. Who knew, right? Okay. Okay, so now I'm starting to see that this clock, it's about our existence after birth and before death, and it's about our energy, and it's about our life force, and it's about how it interacts and moves through our body, and it's about our primary channels. So I'm starting to get the idea for sure that this really is about how we physically manifest in the world. So that's where it starts getting really interesting, because you know what? If you're thinking that too, then you know what? You're right. This clock is about how we're physically manifesting in this world. So, okay, tell me more, right? Tell me something more about this. Well, you might have heard people saying things like, oh, you're waking up at 3 a.m. every night. Every night. Well, that means your lungs are weak. And they could be right. So part of the thought with these 2-hour segments of how chi flows is they think that your organ is going to be most active at that time. So if 3 to 5 is about the lungs, your lungs are going to be most active. They're going to be rebuilding themselves at that time. Well, then there's also the thought that if they're weak, then they can't do what they're supposed to do during that time. And there's a thought in Chinese medicine that you need energy to sleep. So how does that relate to these 2-hour segments and waking up? And how does that relate to someone telling me my lungs are weak at 3 a.m.? Well, the thought is that you need energy to sleep. And so if that organ doesn't have enough energy, then it can't keep you asleep and you're going to wake up. Now, you might have noticed somebody who's always hungry at night. They wake up in the middle of the night and they go to eat. That's kind of that concept. But you know what? This happens during the day too. What about those people that always have to take a nap? Well, that's being weak in a totally different direction. So that's being weak when you're supposed to be awake and you can't stay awake and you have to take a nap. So it doesn't have the energy. Well, how does our body get energy? Well, our body gets energy through nutrition, and nutrition is transported throughout the body through the blood, right? So if your blood's not transporting the correct nutrition, then your organ is not getting the nutrition that it needs to rebuild itself, and then it probably is weak. So what would you have if you're waking up in the middle of the night or falling asleep during the middle of the day? You'd have what they would call blood deficiency. Makes sense, huh? So that's one part. Then that's the part of this clock that we usually hear about the most is, oh, your organs are weak if you're waking up in the middle of the night. And it's the same during the day. Oh, your organs are weak if you have to take a nap during the middle of the day. There's another part to this amazing 24-hour clock of 2-hour segments. And the clock is about understanding the flow of life and how it integrates our mind, our heart, our body, and how we use those things to interact, to think about the world, and to experience life. Are you still wondering if this might be useful for you? Well, you've got a bit of a wait yet because there's some more things that I have to explain to you. But yeah, this is going to be interesting and useful to you. So let's look at how energy flows. Energy, it starts at the lungs and it ends at the liver. So every day has a beginning and an end. Every year has a beginning and an end. Every life has this beginning and end, and it's this repeating cycle. So, like I said, from the lungs to the large intestine, to the stomach, to the spleen, to the heart, small intestine, bladder, kidney, pericardium, sanjiao, gallbladder, liver. That's how it flows. And then, you know, if you've been watching the channel, everything in Chinese medicine is based on threes, the laws of trinities. And so this clock is also separated into 3 groups of 4. And you might be saying, I thought we were talking about the Trinity. I thought we were talking about 3s. Why is there 4? Okay, so if we take the 12 segments and we divide it by 3, each segment has 4 pieces to it. And so that's how we get 3 segments of 4 pieces. Let's talk about each of these sections. So they're going to be called trinities. We're going to have a first, second, and third trinity. And the first trinity is really focused on you learning how to survive in this world. You know, you're learning how the sensations, you're learning how to use your five senses, like breathing, smelling things, like hearing things, like seeing things. You're learning how you feel about things. You're learning how things feel to your body. So it's very much about your sensations, about your five sensations, your five ways of perceiving the world. And it's very much about you. It's all about you. And if you were looking at this from a child development perspective, you're probably looking at your first and second year. Okay, what about the second Trinity? Well, the second Trinity is when things start to heat up and they start getting a little bit more active, because this is when you start engaging with society. So this is when society starts engaging with you, and you start learning about acceptable behavior and not acceptable behavior. You start actually learning about morality. So from a child development perspective, this is probably going to be up until age 5. And then we have the third Trinity, and this Trinity is all about you. It's about how you differentiate yourself from the world. It's about how you accept and are able to integrate these differences with the world. It's about finding out who you are and being able to become a new you. So those are the 3. Oh, and that probably lasts until about 7 or 8. If you've done Chinese medicine, you might know about the 7-year cycle and the 8-year cycle. You might have heard of that, because that cycle is the development cycle for life. So we have a 7-year cycle for women, an 8-year cycle for men. And so 7 years, the next 7 years, women are 14. And so what happens then? They start their period and they start developing into a woman. And then at 21, they're a fully developed woman. Now, what about guys? So guys, 8 years, and then the next 8-year cycle is 16, and their voice starts changing and life starts getting confusing, and they start turning into a man. And then at 24, the next 8-year cycle, they become a man, and on and on and on. So these 7 and 8 year cycles take us through these cycles of chi, and they develop us into a different person every time, which there's something really interesting about that too. Okay, so anyways. Okay, so let's say that that's a lot of information. So let me just kind of highlight it all and touch base on it again, okay? So 24-hour clock, we're going to break it into 2-hour segments. And so we got 2-hour segments. That means there's 12 segments in total now. And each one of these segments is assigned to a separate organ on the primary channels. And the organ and the channel is most active during its 2-hour period. It takes energy to sleep, just like it takes energy to be awake. And so if you don't have the proper nutrition in your blood, then your organs and channels, it's not going to be strong. You're going to have a hard time staying asleep. You're going to have a hard time staying awake. These 2-hour segments, we're going to combine them into groups of 4, so that there's 3 groups of 4. And these 3 groups of 4 are going to be these cyclical processes that we go through as we develop in life. And again, these processes are cyclical. So life's cyclical. You know, we have childhood, adolescence, adults, and life outside of ourselves from day to night are the years, the seasons. So life is cyclical. And the clock models the energy flow of life. So it models the energy flow of life after birth and before death. Okay, that's a lot of information. So I'm going to go over each channel and organ and their 2-hour periods and the clock, and talk about how this creates each of our building blocks of our interaction with the world in the next episode. And because each of us has these 12 building blocks, these blocks, they're used to define ourselves and our personality and how we interact with the world. We all have these, and how we use them is just a little bit different for each one of us. So until next time, I will catch you on the other side.